The HOA president was standing calf-deep in my living room hair, finally surrendering to the rain, pointing at the little camera I'd set on the counter like it was the judge and jury. "You did this on purpose," she said, thinking more from pride than cold. I looked straight into the lens, then at her cream suit gone gray at the hems, and said it plain. "So the record would be clean later. I followed your written order, Ms. Voss, exactly like you demanded. Yeah, that happened. 6 months earlier, I was just a tired man looking for quiet. You know what I mean. My name's Mason Cole, and for 15 years, I was the kind of government guy no one notices until something breaks. Hydrology models, contamination maps, reports that disappear into inboxes like socks in dryers. I told the truth once when I wasn't supposed to, and suddenly meetings were full. My phone stopped ringing, and every job was moving in a different direction. I took the settlement drove west and landed outside a pine town called High Timber, Colorado, the kind of place where the loudest thing all day is a hawk that thinks he owns the ridge. The parcel I found was steep and stubborn, which I liked because steep and stubborn keeps the wrong kind of people away. Day 3, my excavator guy killed the engine, waved me over, and pointed to a seam of dark rock that looked like a bruise. Water wasn't trickling out of it. It was breathing. Cold, clean, steady. I cupped it. Tasted mineral and mountain, and the part of my brain that never clocks out started counting. Flow head recharge, all the invisible math that decides whether a valley thrives or drowns. I did it right, because that's who I am. 3 labs for testing permits pulled inspections, done a small retention bowl, carved where the land already wanted one. Overflow, returning to the old drainage, a line to a tap, so I could drink without feeling like a thief. For 3 months, I lived like a ghost, with a good view. Coffee sun on granite, the spring talking to the stones like they were old friends. Then a white SUV appeared on my logging road, like a spaceship that missed its exit. The door opened, and out stepped a woman who looked like the forest should say thank you. "Mr. Cole," she called, smiling like we'd rehearsed this. "I'm Marina Voss, president of the Summit Crest HOA Down Valley. I'm here about watershed stewardship." She held a portfolio thick enough to stop a bullet. I said what any mountain person says when an HOA president shows up at their fence line. "Ma'am, I'm not in your HOA." The smile didn't move. Of course not. But water doesn't respect property lines. We only want to ensure upstream activities don't create community risks. She gave me paperwork that looked official at a glance, and silly if you actually read it. Wrong terms. Vague threats, a logo that probably had a committee. She invited me to speak at their board meeting, then drove off with tires throwing gravel like punctuation. That night, I followed the paper, because paper always tells on people if you're patient. Turns out Marina wasn't just an HOA president with a love for cream suits. She was also a managing partner at Silverline Communities, and Silverline had been quietly buying parcels in a neat circle around the very drainage that fed my spring lowball offers after long HOA compliance fights. Planning documents, whispering phrases like sustainable water amenity. I went to their meeting expecting brownies and gossip and walked into a pitch deck. Lights low drone footage of our valley, a laser pointer dotting maps like a general planning a campaign. "We have a unique opportunity," she said, voice smooth as a brochure, "a naturally replenished water system. With coordinated stewardship, Summit Crest can ensure safety and unlock value." Someone asked if they had authority beyond their boundary. Marina smiled without smiling. "Environmental protection grants flexibility. We can partner with upstream actors. Upstream actor is a polite way to say the person you plan to lean on. I called a lawyer from my old life, Tara Nguyen, smart, calm, allergic to bullies, and asked if she still liked hard fights. Every day, she said. We dug. My deed had a 1901 clause for spring access in perpetuity, and federal rules stood behind it like a quiet bodyguard. We packaged every lab result, every permit, every photo, wrote a courteous response that whistled as it cut and copied the county, the state, and a federal office with a name long enough to scare people who enjoy shortcuts. 48 hours later, a certified letter showed up with more tone than law. Fine, $2,000 for hoarding Springwater. Creating hazards, failure to remediate. Authority invented signature reel. Tara skimmed, did that unhappy laugh lawyers do, and said, she just wrote impersonation and fraud into the record. The next few days turned cartoonish. Pop-up inspections by folks who dressed the part, but didn't know what part. It was a tripod, parked at the turnout filming my pond, like it had a criminal history. Facebook posts about the menace upstream. I documented everything, because when you are small, and right documentation is your backbone. Then came the letter that changed the weather in my chest. Heavy paper embossed seal. Emergency order, immediate drainage of artificial water storage within 72 hours due to imminent flood risk, signed by a deputy environmental director named Colin Reeves. I called the real director, Dr. Avery McLean, who'd been doing the job longer than most of us have been paying a mortgage, and read it to her. She went quiet in the way professionals do when they're deciding which code section to swing first. We have no deputy by that name, she said, voice steady but sharp. We issued no order. If that was presented to you or law enforcement, that's a felony. I thanked her, hung up, and opened the weather models. An atmospheric river was aimed right at us, 5 to 7 inches in 36 hours, which my retention system would have flattened into a slow release, but without it, the valley would catch a punch. And Down Valley Summit Crest had built their glassy clubhouse at the bottom of the bowl with pretty rock channels that look good in photos and fail when the sky gets serious. Here's the part where some folks will decide who I am. I wrote Dr. McLean a notice saying I intended to comply with the document claiming county authority, asked her to send an inspector, set 3 waterproof cameras with timestamps, printed every permit, every lab sheet clipped that forged order to the front, and called Tara. I'm going to do exactly what she told me to do, I said, heartbeat hammering in my throat. Do it by the book, Tara said. All of them. The next morning, a little convoy crawled up my road. Marina in a hard hat and high-vis vest, a sheriff's SUV, a flatbed with pumps like props. Deputy Landry stepped out, looking like a man who'd been told to keep the peace without receiving instructions on what peace meant. Marina started with the voice of authority. Mr. Cole, we'll supervise compliance today. If you can't complete it, we're prepared to assist. I didn't answer her. I faced the deputy and said, "Where can we confirm your legal authority for this action?" I handed him 2 folders, hers and mine. He read brow folding like a map. Ms. Voss, the county order. She passed him the fancy page. He hesitated. That hesitation was the sound of a foundation cracking. I spoke loud enough for the cameras and calm enough for the room. Deputy, I intend to comply with Ms. Voss's written directive to drain my retention system and remove all barriers to natural flow. I will begin now. Marina tried to retreat while standing still. Perhaps we should reassess the timeline. Prioritize assessment before remediation. I nodded like I agreed as I loosened the first board. Ma'am, your order says immediate, and around here, we take flood risk seriously. County Inspector Hector Ruiz arrived mid-turn, opened a notebook that could outlast a winter, and started taking the kind of notes that stand up in rooms with flags and seals. By dusk, the western sky was a bruise, then a curtain, then a wall. Rain hit with the kind of intent you feel in your teeth. The retention stayed down because the record said it was down, and water did what it always does. It took the old paths only harder, faster, louder. Summit Crest's pretty channels discovered they were pretty not strong. The clubhouse sat where water wanted to sit, and water always wins on its own schedule. By midnight, the access road had 2 breaks, and 3 houses were learning the difference between a finished basement and a pond with furniture. Dawn showed a lobby full of brown water and a foundation chewed down to the rebar. People were scared and angry. I don't blame them for that moment. And in the parking lot above the mess, Captain Dana Whitfield from Emergency Management set up a table, took my folder, and read before deciding. Mr. Cole. She said you removed your retention against your professional judgment, and in response to this directive. Yes, ma'am, I said. I believed ignoring a directive would get me punished. So I complied and documented. She turned to Marina. Ms. Voss. Did you issue or present this order? Marina tried a few answers that fought each other on the way out. We acted in good faith. There may have been confusion. Our legal team. Captain Whitfield didn't argue. She wrote. Cameras found Marina, and she called me an environmental extremist. I didn't respond. The paper was doing the talking now. Federal people arrived like weather breaking. Agent Laurel Price and Dr. Ethan Morales. Polite, focused, asking coffee and better questions. Tara handed them a box with tabs you could read from the street. Offices got searched. Servers hummed into evidence bags. A lot of phones buzzed in pockets that suddenly felt hot. Charges with long names met a set of facts that didn't blink. Impersonation, fraud, conspiracy to interfere with protected water rights, property destruction caused by a fraudulent directive. I didn't cheer. I slept 12 hours for the first time in months. Time moved like it does. Forward. Summit Crest elected a new board that wore boots instead of blazers, raised their new community building out of the floodplain, swapped ornamental channels for capacity. That means something when the sky goes dark, planted. What holds soil instead of what looks good on a sales sheet. They asked me to help a small consulting deal that paid mostly in sleep. I rebuilt the retention better, sat on the porch with coffee, and the sound that still humbles me, water moving at the speed of gravity. People ask if I set her up. I tell them I didn't need to. She set herself up every time she put image over substance pressure, over partnership paper, over physics. I didn't fight her order, I followed it. And if that sounds smug, it isn't. It's a warning. Paper cuts both ways. If you're going to swing it, know what it does when you miss. Now it's your turn. Was I right to comply to the letter when I knew the valley would learn its lesson the hard way? Or was I wrong to let the lesson be that harsh? Have you seen power worn like a costume where you live? An HOA, a company, a committee that talks like the law and acts like a mirror. Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what you've seen go sideways, what justice looks like from your porch. And if you've ever been the quiet one, people misjudged, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, because around here, we don't yell, we document, we design, and we let the truth, like water, find its level.